If you love the new Castlevania series on Netflix, then you are probably gonna love Vampire Hunter D too, because Vampire Hunter D is Castlevania. It's Castlevania's noble ancestor, I swear. I mean, do you really want to know what the true lineage of Castlevania is? Do you really want to know where it originated from? What it was inspired by? Well, basically everything horror that came before it, sure, everybody knows that. But perhaps most specifically of all, Vampire Hunter D, which itself was inspired by the Hammer horror classic, The Horror of Dracula. If you have not watched this vampire flick, check it out. Count Dooku is freaking scary in it. And if you still don't believe me, well, just go play some original Castlevania on your NES. And then when you beat the thing, just go ask Christopher B. or Trans Fisher. Or perhaps this whip-wielding lass from Vampire Hunter D. He's a panda. You're a panda. She's using a whip. He's using a whip. Castlevania is so inspired by Vampire Hunter D, so just shut up. When I first saw Vampire Hunter D, I believe it was October 2001. I was a senior in high school, and like I need to tell you, but this was a great time for anime. After all, this was during what was considered to be the anime renaissance in America. Thanks to DBZ and Pokemon and the legendary Toonami run on Cartoon Network, the floodgates were now open to what was once honestly considered to be something pretty nerd taboo, right along with playing D&D and the study of the Klingon language. Kerpla! Nerd! Was suddenly overnight becoming as nerd mainstream as Star Wars action figures and X-Men comics. And personally for me, after watching DBZ, but especially after watching Outlaw Star, I've got to cover that one sometime. I was all but in love. It was all but love at first sight for me. Because I've always been a huge comic book fan since comic cards were invented. And yet suddenly, thanks to Japanimation, I suddenly had a whole new world of pop culture to explore. I suddenly had hundreds, thousands even, of all these fantastic animated stories from Japan. And plenty of which, unlike their American counterparts, if we forget about heavy metal for a second, went well beyond the realm of PG and got pretty PG-13 to hard R in a matter of seconds and beyond.
Don't let it cross your mind that I wouldn't mind raping a dead girl.
Don't let it cross your mind that I would not mind raping a dead girl. Jesus! But what was especially lucky for me about discovering Vampire Hunter D during that fall of my senior year was, thanks to Symphony of the Night, I was already a huge Castlevania fan. And like I already said, this movie is so fucking Castlevania. Case closed. So when I sat down to actually watch D for the first time, oh my god, awesome! And they'll tell you as soon as the movie opens, the story of Vampire Hunter D takes place in the distant future, when mutants and demons slither through a world of darkness. The opening to this movie has such a hypnotic, dreamlike quality to it. Or perhaps I should say nightmare quality, because before you have any clue about just what the hell is going on in this flick, suddenly, oh shit, there's a monster! Oh shit, there goes your horse! Oh shit, there's a fucking vampire!
Oh my god, Hamlet! I just saw a fucking vampire! It bit me right in the neck! Save yourself, Hamlet!
Shit! And by this point, you are instantly sucked right into it. Your mind desperately craving more story puzzle pieces to help you put the whole damn thing together. Well, here it is. Daughter of a deceased werewolf hunter, Doris Lang was out protecting her farm one night when she accidentally strayed a little too far into vampire country. And she got bitten by none other than Count Magnus Lee, a reference to Christopher Lee from Horror of Dracula, one of the oldest remaining vampires on the planet. Fearing that the Count will soon come to collect her and turn her into a creature of the night herself, fearing that there will be no one left to take care of her farm, but especially her little brother anymore, Dan, Doris enlists the aid of a mysterious young vampire hunter simply known as D. And fortunately for her, D is probably the best when it comes to vampire hunting, because he is also half vampire himself, a dhampir, and potentially the son of Dracula. They hint to it a lot, and oh, FYI, he also has a magical talking hand that helps him out from time to time. A talking hand, okay! Makes a whole lot of sense if you just don't think about it. And of course, he also has a sword so long and sharp and pointy that I'm sure it makes Sephiroth just a little bit jealous. I mean, this movie's out of control here. A feast for the eyes and the imagination. Well, hello, ladies. Holy shit! And I love watching it just about every Halloween season, along with the sequel, Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, which is also definitely worth your time as well, but if you have to pick one, just go with the first. Go with the first one because, yes, on one hand, Bloodlust is 10 times more beautifully animated and orchestrated, yes. And the Barbaroi will always have a very special place in my heart, especially you, Bengi. But my god, does that that movie drag in the middle. Seriously, the whole damn thing comes to a complete stop. So pick the first. But what really surprised me and fascinated me most about the original Vampire Hunter D movie was that later on, as it were, 4 years later actually, now during the autumn of my senior year at SUNY Plattsburgh, at a most serendipitous moment indeed, I found out that Vampire Hunter D originally started out as a novel over in Japan, and one written by Hideyuki Kikuchi and drawn by none other than Yoshitaka Amano. And if you're familiar with Final Fantasy at all, then you know this guy's work. And the timing of this little discovery could not have been more perfect for me, because I had literally just decided for the first time in a very long time to actually sit down and read something that was not either in comic book or video game text format. I was broadening my horizons, people, but where to start? Where to begin? With mother effing Vampire Hunter D, that's where. Because it was right in front of me that day, right under my nose at the local Borders, hot off the presses in 2005, freshly translated, and with pictures too. Perfect. It was perfect timing. Well, I'll be damned if I did not throw down $8.95 for a fresh copy. I still got it, by the way. No, you can't borrow it. And Vampire Hunter D was an awesome first book to seriously get into reading. Because just like with the anime movie, it would later inspire its fun. It's a fun vampire horror, post-apocalyptic, macabre roller coaster ride filled with monsters and vampires, and with an anime sensibility to it. I mean, how does that not sound like fun, right? But even better, the novel gets into all sorts of details and ideas that the movie obviously had to leave out due to time constraints. The biggest being that, remember when the movie said that the story takes place in the distant future? Well, they seriously left out. They failed to mention exactly how far into the distant future. Try 10,000 years into the distant future. Enough time for a lot of things to happen. Enough time for an entire vampire empire to rise and then fall. And even though Vampire Hunter D is a relatively short novel, less than 250 pages, when you sit down to read it, it still gives you such tantalizing details and fantastically rich glimpses into this once mighty vampire empire, about how it ever came to be in the first place. I'll give you a hint: the Cold War, and how it eventually fell, about how it was all but gone by the time the story of D takes place, because transient beings were they. Want to find out more? Want to find out why most of humanity somehow forgot that vampires are deathly allergic to garlic? Of course you do. Well, then you gotta sit down and read this one sometime. Read yourself some Vampire Hunter D. This is definitely the best time to do it. A very good time of year indeed for vampire movies, vampire games, vampire books, vampire Netflix series, and maybe even some pumpkin beer while you play yourself some Super Ghouls and Ghosts on your SNES Classics, if you were lucky enough to get one. Wahaha. I'm Justin M. Bailey, and happy Halloween to you all. Thank you so much for celebrating my most favorite time of the year with me. Read my book. Thank you!
Go away, spooky vampire, go away.
Oh my god, Hamlet! I just saw a fucking vampire! It bit me right in the neck! Save yourself, Hamlet! Shit!